Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week I'm talking with Jennifer Schuler and Hillary Frei, the CEO and CMO, respectively, of Handel's Homemade Ice Cream, a treat franchise that has around 150 locations across the country and which is celebrating 80 years in business this year. Jennifer and Hillary are both fairly new to Handel's, but they've already brought an exciting energy to the company as they seek to find a balance between its rich heritage and its potential for fast growth. They joined the podcast to talk about how they see themselves as stewards of the Handel's legacy and how this brand excels by being a member of its local communities. In this interview, you will learn more about why brand development is a marathon, not a sprint, why restaurant executives should respect the arcs of their respective brands, and why your franchisees should reflect your brand values. Jumping now into my interview with Handel's Jennifer Schuler and Hillary Frei. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Jen Schuler and Hillary Frei of Handel's Ice Cream. Guys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Okay, guys, so you are both relatively new to Handel's, but you guys are longtime veterans of the restaurant industry. So we're going to talk about this brand, but I want to start by talking about you two and your paths to Handel's. So, Jen, let's start with you because you arrived first. Jen, tell me about your career and how it led you to Handel's.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about the intersection with Hillary too, because I think that's important. We both went to business school, and both coming out of business school chose to move to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we worked at General Mills, and we were interns together there over 20 years ago. And I think, and I'll let Hillary speak to it, but like for both of us, it was really foundational learning. We went and got our MBA, and then we got our MBA in marketing from General Mills. And so we both went through that experience and then both took some different paths from there. And it's just truly delightful for our careers to be intersecting again, because we have that shared history and a real like shared approach in terms of how we think about brands that we bring here to Handel's. My path took me into Wetzel's Pretzels, where I was the CMO, president, ultimately the CEO. And I was also a franchisee along the way. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, Sam. I owned, along with my husband, we owned 2 locations at the Mall of America in Minnesota. So that was really foundational because it helped me understand exactly what it takes to be a franchisee and have a much deeper appreciation for those challenges. Sure. So after spending about a decade at Wetzel's, 2 things happened. One, we sold the business. I took a little time off and I started to think about what brands I just thought were delightful, that I enjoyed personally, and I thought had the opportunity to scale and become something meaningful to guests, but bigger in its footprint and in its brand presence. And the brand that popped in my head, this was in November of last year, was Handel's. And I kid you not, when 1 week later, the recruiters called me to tell me that there was an opening in the CEO seat. So that was one of the critical things. The other thing that happened is that Wetzel's at the time was looking for a head of marketing. I had already exited. And I said to myself, the best person I know for marketing, like the most talented person I could recommend was Hillary. And so she actually, we never worked there together, but she actually spent some time at Wetzel's as well. And as I thought, like the team found her just as fantastic as I did. So our careers have sort of been like they were like started at the same roots, ran parallel, and now intersecting, which is making this a ton of fun.
It's so funny. I mean, it feels like fate. It feels like the universe is telling you, because the fact that you thought about Handel's and a week later that job was coming available for you, but the fact that Hillary then was also part of Wetzel's without you separately and then ended up being available here is kind of amazing. Hillary, I got a lot there from Jen about your career, but tell me more about, what led you here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, super foundational, as Jen said, at General Mills. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use something. In fact, I just referenced like an acronym yesterday when Jen and I were talking about advertising. But I spent 6 years there. I loved that experience. And then I went and worked in a variety of different sectors. I was really kind of all over the place. I worked in fashion, I worked in hard goods. I was the CMO and then a president of a direct-to-consumer appliance company, vintage inspired, called Big Chill Appliances. I went to FAO Schwartz and ran e-com for them, and then made my way to Wetzel's Pretzels. And then ultimately, I think I was on vacation and outside of a Handles with online and thought, I need to, I want to be a part of this, whatever this is. And I knew that Jen had been in that process. And so I texted her and said, wow, this Handles thing. And she said, I just accepted the job as a CEO. And so it was really an incredible, I really do feel like it was meant to happen. I really take my career really by gut and what brand, the brand that I want to work on. And I really consider myself my kind of calling in life's work as a brand steward. That's what I feel like I was put here to do. And, I think of these brands as I am their temporary steward, and I want them to be safe in my hands. And just the brand of Handles, I felt like it had all the makings of a classic American brand, like the F.A. Schwartz and the Cheerios that I had worked on. And I really wanted to be a part of it. And the fact that Jen was the leader was, the cherry on top.
That's amazing. I mean, this really was
cherry on top. Hillary, Sam, pause. Okay, an ice cream pun, and we're only
that's probably the first of many, I'm sure. We're going to get a few more of those. Well, amazing the story of how you two came together, and obviously, clearly a great rapport that you have with each other, a great fit together for working now together on Handles. But for those who don't know this brand, I'm very fortunate. As you guys know, I live in Ohio. I'm well familiar with Handles. I have one right down the street from me. We are big fans here at the Oches household. But for those who are not familiar with this concept, it's got an impressive story, celebrating 80 years in 2025, which is incredible. I mean, way longer than most other brands, period, but certainly ice cream brands, but also just kind of great Midwest roots. Jen, starting with you, tell me a little bit more about the story of this brand and why that really appealed to you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you also why the 80-year history mattered to me and why I felt like it was so critical to have Hillary in the role that she's in. Like you talked about that idea of her being the steward. So, the brand was founded in 1945 in Youngstown, Ohio by a woman named Alice Handel. And she ran it out of her husband's gas station. Developed all the recipes herself and ran it for nearly 40 years on her own. And it became this beloved institution in Youngstown. She was a tough cookie. She had a strong commitment to quality. She tried selling the business a couple times and bought it back because she was unhappy with the owner's consistency and quality of the product and just didn't feel like it lived up to the Handel's name, which I think is so badass for a woman in her time. No, not good enough. I'm going to take it back. Until she finally sold it in the 80s to a gentleman named Lenny Fisher, who is actually the chairman of the board of Handel. So he's still active and involved in the business. And under his hands, he began growing it and franchising it. Not before he spent a couple years working side by side with Alice to prove that he could take her methodologies and replicate them consistently. And so from there started to grow the brand. But that's a really important history because it tells you that commitment and to quality and commitment to that consistency of our methods. The part I wanted to talk about, with Hillary, is when I look at brands, the best brands, like Hillary said, leaders come in and they're here for a phase. If a brand is going to endure over generations, you're just holding that brand and you're stewarding it for a short period of time, really in the life of the whole brand. And I think in particular for hospitality brands, you can't disconnect from your roots because when you do, you lose the soul of the business. And you have to think about it as an arc. And yeah, you might get to change the trajectory or the curve of that arc during your time as a leader. But I think where people go wrong is when they step in and they so desperately want to put a footprint or a mark on it that they pull out the roots of what made the brand work. And so I think what you see that's maybe a little bit different in the way Hillary and I approach this, and Hillary in particular, because of her experience with heritage brands, and I'll let you talk about that, Hillary, is that idea of honoring tradition, understanding it deeply, and seeing this as part of like a story and a curve that we're going to move it forward and we're going to change the trajectory of that business, but it's always going to stay really connected to where we started.
I love that the idea of story, and clearly with a legacy brand like Handel's, with any brand that's been around more than 30, 40 years, there's so much rich story there. So Hillary, tell us about that. Tell us about, I mean, you're still just a few months into this gig now. You had this opportunity, obviously, to team up with a friend of yours, but clearly you must have also kicked the tires and looked into this brand to see what the story was that you could get your hands on from a marketing capacity. What do you see in the story of this brand and how you can put that to use?
Yeah, I mean, again, I take the idea of stewarding a legacy brand so seriously. Cheerios was founded in 1941, kind of a similar era to Handel's ice cream. I worked on Trick Zero, which was the first kids cereal that was in the 1950s. Obviously, FAO was in the late 18. I think it was in the 1880s that was started. So it's just like these incredible legacy brands that I loved. And just what was so amazing to me about Handles was, it's an 80-year-old brand, but for the first 40 years, it was a single shop.
Yeah.
It was a one shop, one store. And for someone to do something for 40 years with not an eye to growth, not an eye to make, millions of dollars, really doing it for the art of it, just was so compelling to me. There's stories that she wouldn't go to weddings. She wouldn't go on vacation. She was there day in and day out. And her art was making this beautiful ice cream. And that was so moving to me. And so this idea that you have this legacy brand that, didn't grow for its first half of its life was a single shop. And, it's got all of this rich history, but 80 years later, there's 150 stores. And so there's so much white space for growth and to take this incredible brand into the communities all across the country that, because growing up in Ohio, this brand and this product is so meaningful to people who grew up with it. Like the emotional connection that people have to it, which is why I'm in marketing to really connect people with the things that matter in their lives. So that, we were just opening a corporate store in Midtown Atlanta, and a woman came who was 79 years old, turning 80 next year, originally from Youngstown, Ohio. And it was so moving to me. She drove an hour and a half to check on the store as it was under construction.
She wanted to make sure, like, people told her it was coming, and she was like, I have to see it with my own eyes. Keep going, Hillary. I love this story.
Yeah, stood in the rain for 3 hours to get ice cream for a year and talked to, everyone. And she just talked about how it was woven into the fabric of her childhood. And chocolate pecan is an iconic flavor in Youngstown. It was what Handel's was kind of built upon. And so we had chocolate pecan, and we gave her a sample of it, and she closed her eyes, and I'm going to get choked up talking about it. Then it took her back. I mean, she cried and we cried. And it was this like amazing moment for, connecting the past and the present. And really what like brands and products do best is give people those really special moments in their life. Yes. So I felt like this brand was ripe to do that. And I wanted to be part of doing that.
That's amazing. I mean, it kind of feels, you guys must feel like you're cheating sometimes, right? Like that is an unfair advantage times 10. Like it's not fair that you because like no brand can manufacture that, right? Like you can't make that woman just show up.
Sam, Hillary is not exaggerating one bit. Like eyes closed, tears coming down the corners, and I'm like time machine. Like you watch someone transport herself back to her girlhood. So I think it's that like, and the moment that gives that person, and then also like the intergenerational and connection moment that gives people, especially as you look at like people are lonelier than ever. Social media creates more disconnection. Like I mean, we're pretty proud of our product. I think that alone stands on its own 2 feet. But when you're able, like you said, it does feel like cheating when you're able to take that and elevate, and I think it's why Hillary and I were both drawn to it, right? As marketers, when you find something that powerful, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the opportunity to like give that to my kids and introduce it to this generation, like that is, we go to the handles, like, when my son wins a game, we went when he got cut from a team, like giving that to, it has been that way for 80 years. And to be able to give that to, bring that places that is where it isn't yet, is that combination of like amazing ice cream, the tradition, the community. Those are really our values. Like we want franchisees that are embedded in their communities, that live there, that are in the schools, their kids are on the team, really, really integrated in community. And so you can bring that sense of community and this concept to your community. So it can be the place where you have all those memories and you're together as a family.
So let's talk about that concept of stewardship then, because there could also be some pressure with this, right? Because if you think about an 80-year-old brand that means that much to people, it also means that you have to be good stewards of it. You have to be to some degree kind of careful with what you do with this concept. I know Handel's also, very still steeped in tradition, making ice cream on site. And also it's a pickup window. You guys aren't doing these big flashy lobbies or anything like that. So if the two of you walk in and just say, forget it, we're going to be doing these big flashy lobbies, we're going to move to a commissary, take that, you guys could do that if you wanted to, but then you would also be screwing with the model that works.
Come on,
you're not going to, just to be clear.
Don't utter those words, commissary.
I won't say it again the rest of the episode here. But so you do have some pressure to making sure you are good stewards and you honor what the people's expectations are. So how do you do that while also recognizing that it's 2025, you have to modernize and update to some degree? Hillary, it looks like you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jen and I were trained for that pressure. Like, we were trained at General Mills with these brands that had been around, and the mantra at General Mills was take care of the brands and take care of the people. Like that was your job, was to steward that brand. And so that it doesn't feel like pressure; it feels like privilege to me. That is like,
I feel the same way. The same words you just said. It doesn't feel like pressure.
Yeah, it feels like that's what I want to do with my life. And I want it to be me. I don't want it to be someone else who will go and put the digital sign up that it doesn't feel right for the brand. Like and the way we do that is Jen and I listen and we learn and we immerse. We go to Ohio and we talk to everyone and we see everything, and we as much like we are always learning and listening and, understanding where we honor the tradition and where we can make changes to keep it relevant, to keep it, to continue to push it into the future. Like that is an art, not a science, but an art that we've been trained to do.
I think to tap on that one, there's also we have this dual responsibility. We have that I think creates the tension, Sam. Mm-hmm. The responsibility one is to the guest, to give them the tradition of the ice cream that they know and love that honors that past. We have the secondary responsibility. We're a franchise system, not corporate. Yeah. We have a responsibility of franchisees to help them maintain not only a profitable business, but one that gives them a strong return on the investment and the ability to scale. And that's a responsibility I don't take lightly. I mean, I think it's again, not pressure, but privilege, because it's an opportunity to use this brand, not only to delight communities, but to help business owners change the trajectory of their lives, to build generational wealth for their families. And so there is a responsibility for that. And that's where the tension can be, because that's where you can look to cut costs, add digital, things like that drive to the bottom line. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things we look at is what's core to our values and the guest experience. And those things are sacred that you try not to touch. But where can you find improvements that are less guest facing, don't impact their experience, but help the franchisee? So a perfect example of that tension, Sam, would be hey, would we ever implement some technology that helps run the back of house smoother, manage COGS better, digital sensors on ice cream so the quality is improved and you can, ensure that it's staying at temp without having to do handwritten logs? Yeah, we would do that. Would we put a kiosk where you ordered product in front of that walk-up window because it's cheaper? You reduce the labor? No, we wouldn't do that. Like, the point is human connection. The point is spending a little time in line. The point is talking about the 48 flavors that are on tap and which one they like and which one's here and are they bringing back pumpkin pie and when that will happen. So those are places where we would not let technology, even though that's a best practice in the industry, we'd find other ways to make our franchisee profitable to help reduce their labor load than without interrupting the guest experience.
Well, and that must be useful too, because there isn't, again, pressure on you to go find all these flashy innovations. We were talking before we hit record about Texas Roadhouse, which I've spent a lot of time with recently, and kind of a similar idea of obviously a much different business, huge big box stores, but all of their innovation, especially with tech, is you can't see it. It's in the back of the house. They just want to make their employees' lives easier and protect the brand and the customer interaction. So to some degree, that especially Jen, for you, and sort of setting the tone and the strategy for this company, you don't have to be thinking about drone delivery and all these things because it doesn't fit the brand.
Right, exactly. And it's funny you bring up Texas Roadhouse. That's actually one we've been studying a bit as a team, paying attention to. I think one of the things that they do nicely, and that I think the brands that are winning in the restaurant space are doing today, is offering an affordable luxury to a guest. So like when your when your pocketbook is being pinched, you're still going to find opportunities to treat yourself. So you might not be going out every day for your coffee or for your eating out for dinner. You might be cooking at home, but you're going to go out and celebrate for the family. And you're going to go to Texas Roadhouse for an affordable steak dinner and a good portion size and nice service. Like when you spend the dollar, you want that experience. And so that's another thing we've all been very protective of as part of the brand is our pricing. We think more like in and out. We think take modest price point increases and your guests will reward you with your loyalty over time, right? It's an 80-year brand. So we really coach that. And then if you look at their portion size, I'm sure you know this, Sam, incredibly abundant portion sizes. A small is literally 3 scoops. So we really, we want it to be an experience where a family goes out and they feel like they can treat themselves and they don't leave feeling pinched.
And I think, the generosity, which it's both, both in the price point and in the portions, like those, generosity is a value of the brand. Being generous with portions, being generous within our communities, being generous with each other corporately as a culture, that is one of, we talk about craftsmanship and generosity and tradition and community, those are our values. And we have a literal, the portion size and the price point is a literal representation of
expression of that. Yeah, you're totally right.
So you use this word experience, Jen, which we talk about experience all the time, and it means a lot of different things. But I think, obviously for Handels, and I told you guys a few weeks ago, but Handels, we have this great experience with our local Handels where it's next to a playground. And it's this wonderful time that we can grab ice cream at the window and literally walk to a playground, eat our ice cream on the bench, and then the kids play on the playground. And so it's not a, fly by, go through the drive-through for a convenience. It is we choose to drive there for the broader experience. And Hillary, I'm curious from your standpoint, because when I say experience, a lot of times now people think about how it's affected by Gen Z, Instagram, TikTok, all of the new digital trends. A lot of that kind of experience is starting to bleed into the overall restaurant experience, and especially how you market and message. But that experience I described to you, my Handels, where I get ice cream and walk to a playground, is very analog. It's very low tech, lo-fi.
That's right. And that is what we're in this fast-paced digital world. We are trying to give people a place to slow down and have as Jen said, that conversation about which flavors, the scooper likes best. to have a moment with their kids, to have the line, which Handles have lines, they have queuing lines, like to have that be a place where you talk to your family, you spend time, you slow down. It's part of the process. And so I think I am less, as a marketer, what I'm less concerned about is, how that translates to digital. What I'm more concerned about is like the feeling in that space. Like people want to be in beautiful spaces. They want to be in spaces that make them feel good. And so that, as a marketer, that's what I think about. Like, how can we enhance this with lighting and with music and with, visuals? Like, how can we make this a place that, Sam, you want to take your kids and you want to spend a half an hour there because it makes you feel good. It's a beautiful space. It's a space that evokes like warm feelings. You get a great product for a great price. Like, so as a marketer, that's what I think about. And I think when people have those experiences in those spaces, they tell people, and the way we tell people these days is digitally. So I'm less focused on the digital experience. I'm more focused on the in-person real experience. And I think that people, when they share it. And the way we share everything for the most part is through our phones.
Yeah, well, and I think though too, a word of mouth, my friend tells me about something carries more significance than something I see on social media, which I might not trust as much, right? So there's also incredible value still there, and I want to talk about that through the lens of growth and franchising. And Jen, we were talking about how the community is so important to Handles and the growth, and the franchisee being a part of that community. Tell me how this influences Handel's growth strategy, because you guys say there's a lot of white space here. I mean, every community in America loves ice cream. Every person in America, for the most part, loves ice cream. So that part's not difficult. But how do you find those communities where you can facilitate that experience? You have that franchisee who's in touch with the community and can make those connections. How do you make that a strategy going forward?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think the one thing that I think about is in franchising, foundationally, you have to have a strong business model, strong unit economics to attract the right people, right? So like when you've got that, which, we haven't talked about a lot, this has been a brand conversation, but from a unit economics perspective, what you get on ice cream, the margin is really strong. So that allows us to hold the bar a bit higher, right? You start as a starting point. Like we are offering, like our AUVs are 2 and 3 times the nearest other franchise ice cream system. So strong AUVs, strong unit economics, that allows us to, number one, bring the bar up pretty high. And I think we are looking for those folks who see marketing from the perspective of community outreach and generosity, the way Hillary described it. And like, even when we talk about local store marketing, like I think for us, that language is more community outreach and hospitality. And I think if you find those people who like delight in bringing joy to others, delight in connecting, and you can feel it when we get on the phone or on a Zoom or in a meeting with these franchisees, it's the ones who make you feel good the minute you start talking. You can actually feel it in the conversation with them. They're reflecting back what you heard. They're engaging with you. They're learning about you. They're talking about the school that they went to, or, and those kinds of that are local. Those are the cues that get us in there. But there's also an opportunity for multi-unit ownership in a brand like this because it is so easy to scale. What I've seen are some of our franchisees have done very successfully. The multi-unit operators have hired operating managers that are in their community and kind of will serve that role for them once they've reached a scale of 6 to 10 stores. So we have a mix of franchisees that work, the single 1 or 2 unit operators that live and work in that community, and then the larger scale multi-units that can hire in an operating manager to serve that role.
Got it. So 2024, you guys both joined this company. You're still very, very fresh in your roles here. Looking to 2025, thinking about not necessarily what was broke at Handles before, but what maybe did you come in saying, let's change this or fix this? What were some of the ways in which you wanted to influence the direction of Handel's first? Like, what were those priorities that you said to yourselves, this is what we can do for this brand now as we move into the latter half of 24 and now in 2025? Jen, starting with you, and then Hillary will get you.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit, but I really am interested
Sure.
on Hillary's perspective on this one. I don't think there was much broken, but it was about like grounding and codifying what really truly works. Because people, it was working well. Then people, we could do this. We'd launch this flavor of ice cream. We could bring this technology in front. We had to really ground in the values. Like you hear how Hillary can just articulate them. Boom, 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 boom. Grounding in those and then codifying like the mission, the values, the concept, the program we bring to franchisees, so that as we scale, because I think you're going to start to see the growth of this become more rapid, we protect what has served the brand so well over the last 80 years.
Yeah. And for me, it was really giving, I found that these franchisees worked so hard and there were so many things that they were doing themselves, and really giving them tools to be successful, like making it easier for them to market LTOs, making it easier for them to highlight flavors of the month, making it just really giving them tools and assets that they can use and don't have to create themselves or spend time on, so that they can spend their time in those communities. They can spend their time with the guest. So that for me was like, how can I create process and programs that are really just giving these franchisees the tools that they need, giving them really world-class tools, world-class creative, world-class, campaigns, so that they can take those and use them and adapt them as needed for their local communities. But like, just, I think of them as my customer, and like, how do I give them what they need and do it in a system-wide way, in order to be as successful as possible.
Got it.
I have a thought on that also, Sam, from a brand perspective that I find unique to Handles, that is also a challenge point for us, which is, a lot of people who have a local Handles don't realize that it's a nationwide chain, 150 stores out of 15 states. Like sometimes they get surprised. They'll be like, oh, I thought this was the only one, which I think is super cool and very special. And so I do think one of the challenges we have is, yes, we are and will be a bigger national chain. How do we allow it, or not just promote that local feel? So that's what you hear Hillary talking about here, is like, in our case, our franchisees manage their own social media for each store. That's not common, for a national chain. But we think it's part of what gives it more of that local touch. Mm-hmm. And so the more that Hillary is creating these tools that help them make their lives easier, but still allow for the local customization, which is, I think, so important to how the guest feels about their handles.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, an unfair advantage, right? Because once you kind of cross over that line into, oh, it's just a chain, you've kind of lost the relationship with the customer. You've lost some of the trust because they're, for whatever reason, dirty word that it's just a chain. All right. So peeking ahead into 2025, Hillary, going back to you, of course, 80 years here. Imagine you guys want to celebrate that and blow that out big. For the marketing in 2025, what should we expect from Handles?
Yeah. I think, it will be, we'll be coming out with new flavors that we're really excited about. Can't talk about yet, but really, really exciting. I think we have a really great lineup. Obviously it will be a huge celebration around the 80th year, and really celebrating our customers. I have kind of a campaign that I'm working on that that ties in that 80th year and our customers and our heritage, something that I'm really excited about. And I'll share with you, Sam, when it's ready.
Great.
And then really just continuing, as Jen said, not a lot was broken, but like really continuing to elevate the brand and get it into, and get it into the hands of more people as we grow, as these stores open. You talked about the growth rate, like really being able to connect with those local communities and those peoples in those communities. So it will be a busy year. We're really excited, really motivated, and just like thrilled, that it is this monumental year for the brand, and that Jen and I get to be a part of it.
Yeah. And Jen, tell me about that from a broader sort of company direction standpoint. What should we expect in 2025?
Yeah. So I'll say two things. First, I think that going into 2025 and 2026, it's going to start to feel like Handles was this overnight sensation, 80 years in the making. Like, I think you'll see this trajectory and you're going to hear more about the brand and you're going to be from Ohio, like, guys, I've known about this for like since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and everyone's going to like, so I think that's what you're going to see. The other thing I think you're going to see is us really fueling up our product development engine. In combination with Hillary, we also have Jody Neroni, who has literally worked for Handel since she was a teenager, has been with the company 25 plus years, and is heads up all of our product development on new flavors. So we really focus on bringing flavors that are timeless classics. So like, flavors that have been loved across generations. Banana cream pie would be one that comes to mind. And so you're going to see that innovation pipeline really fire up and see continued new launches from us. We have 140 flavors developed over the past 80 years. So we'll be continuing to add to that library. And I think it distinguishes us. I think we do a really great job of nailing flavors and giving people, as I said, like the timeless classics that they love.
Yeah. Well, very exciting. And as somebody who has a Handles near me, I'm sure I'm going to partake. So I thank you in advance. Last question for both of you. Someday in the future, maybe many, many years from now, when you've retired from Handles, you've left your mark on this company, what do you hope it is? What do you hope your fingerprints on Handles will ultimately be? Hillary, starting with you.
I hope that I'm here a long time. I'll say that first of all. I hope that I'm here a long time. And I hope that, I was able to maintain the most important parts of the tradition during a period of intense growth. Yeah. Like, if I can do that, if I can thread that needle, which again, I've done at FAO and done, other places, like I will be really proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Jen, final word from you.
I feel the same way. I would say if, the woman Hillary was talking about at that Atlanta Open, her name was Bonnie Dykes, the one who was 79 years old. If I can 20 years from now be at an opening and watch someone else who's now in their 70s have a similar experience, I'll know that I've done the right thing.
That's awesome. Well, exciting to watch. Hillary and Jen, this has been such a great time catching up with you guys. Thank you so much. Very excited to see what is in store for Handel. So thanks again for taking some time. That was my interview with Handel's Jennifer Schuler and Hillary Frei. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that brand development isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. Handel's was founded 80 years ago, 1945, at the tail end of World War II. That is how old this company is. And yet, for the first 40 years of business, Handel's was one shop run by the founder, Alice Handel. That is amazing to think about in this day and age when so many brand founders, so many restaurant founders, entrepreneurs, they're thinking about an exit the minute they open their business. It is very trendy today for entrepreneurs to want to open something, scale it, and get out and make some money. Now, no disrespect to anybody who does that or who wants to do that. But sometimes you've got to look at brand development and scaling a business as a very long marathon, not as some sort of sprint, open as many locations and then get out of it. Think about that. 80 years in business, and Handel's is now about 150 locations all across the country. If Alice Handel, the founder, had envisioned that for the first 40 years that she was running one shop in Youngstown, Ohio, she probably couldn't have believed that it would ever come to that. Of course, she sold the brand and it was scaled and is now a great success. But the point here is I talk to people all the time who are just thinking numbers. They're thinking scale. They're thinking, how do I open more and more and more of these? Even if they're not thinking about an exit, they still want to grow. And growth is good, but growth might happen over a longer period of time than you think. My second takeaway is that restaurant executives should respect the arcs of their respective brands. I really appreciated how Jen was talking about the fact that hospitality brands, the executives at a hospitality brand like Handel's, they're only there for a short term, often a very small part of the overall history of a company. So CEOs and CMOs like Jen and Hillary are, they come in and they take stewardship of this company and they have a lot of influence on it. But at the end of the day, as Jen pointed out, they might push it one way or the other. They might, have some influence over which direction or trajectory a company has. But it all comes back to this broader arc that the company is on, and the executive only oversees a small part of that. I think that's important for executives to consider that, you have influence over a company, but you only are there for a limited amount of time. And you have to not only think about the future without you, but you have to remember the past without you. Jem pointed out too that, every company has roots, and especially these heritage brands like Handel's has roots. And those roots are very important to the success of a brand. For an executive to come into a company, if they were to uproot it and start from scratch, change everything, they're going to change what makes that company so successful. So when you come into a company as a restaurant executive, respect the roots, honor the roots, understand that you're only there for a short period of time in the long run of that company's arc, and you can have a great influence on it, but you are not there to totally change the course of it or to ruin the arc that it is on. My third takeaway is that generosity is an underappreciated characteristic of successful brands. What I mean by that is you can tell just how excited Jen and Hillary are for the work that they get to do for Handels. And I had a blast talking with them, as you could probably tell. They exude generosity. And they talked about the fact that generosity is something that they try to imbue in all of Handels. They imbue it into the corporate structure and their corporate model. They try to make sure it's passed down from employees to guests. But of course, they also talk about generosity from the perspective of portion size and price. Hillary was talking about the fact that, this is an affordable luxury, that guests commit their money and their time to go to your brand. And, you want to ensure that at the end of the day, they receive that generous portion, they receive a generous price, they receive generosity from the employees, and that they overall get a positive experience from all of that. I'm pointing this out mostly because when I hear about brand values, core values at all of the other restaurant companies, generosity is rarely one of them. And I think that it's so important, especially in this day and age, to remember generosity in all its forms, whether that's from person to person at corporate, whether that's from manager to employee, employee to guest, or again, generosity as seen in the extra big portion sizes or the affordable prices that you charge. It will always come back to you. Generosity pays for itself by the guests becoming loyal to your business because of that positive experience that they got when they went to you for that affordable luxury. My fourth takeaway is that your franchisees should reflect your brand values. Handels, as it grows, it is looking for new franchise partners, and a lot of its franchise partners are small, really mom and pop shops that are embedded in their communities, that the franchisee is embedded in their communities. And Jen was explaining, the type of franchisee they look for. And I really love how she put it, because she said that they see their values reflected in the franchisees. When they sit down with potential franchisees, they see the match pretty easily because of the fact that that person or those people are showing the same values that Handels has as a brand. And that is passion for the community, that's serving the customers, being a part of the community. When you franchise, you are going to have a lot of people who want to write you a check and get in with your business because they like the product, they like the brand, they want to grow with you, they want to make money, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you have to find a strong franchise match, because this is a long-term partnership. And if you don't look for a franchisee who reflects your values, there will be that mismatch. And it could be a mismatch for a long time. So follow the advice of Jen and of Handels in looking for franchisees who reflect your values back to you, because that gives you the best chance at success with your franchisees. My fifth and final takeaway is that your guests may treat you as an independent restaurant, and you should lean into that. So this is just talking to all of you chains out there. Chain has become something of a dirty word, right? People see chain as a bad thing, as if that's just something I go to for convenience or because it's cheap or whatever. But I don't see that as quality. It's just a chain. Of course, we know that's not the case. So many of us making our livelihoods in this business of chain restaurants. But I guess I set that up to say Handles is very focused on treating each individual Handles as that community's ice cream shop. And they even go so far, as Hillary was saying, that their social media handles are each done by each local store. So they have local social media accounts for each local handles. And that's because they can use that to connect with their community. But as both Jen and Hillary kept bringing up, this idea that the guest is so passionate about handles and they see their local handles as as their handles, right? When there are some chains that you're seeing them in every community and you may not have an emotional connection to it because you see them everywhere. But when there is a chain in your neighborhood that, it's not everywhere, it's just in your neighborhood, you've got to know the franchisee maybe, or the manager or the employees. You go there all the time. You have these great experiences. You create an emotional bond to it. Like it's your ice cream shop. That's your handles. And I guess that's why I say that, they might not even know you're a chain. They're going to treat you as that independent restaurant that's just a part of their community. And that is such a good thing that you should embrace and invest in. Even if they find out you're a chain later on, who cares? So long as you've provided them that independent restaurant hospitality, service, and quality, the guests might not know any better. They just want that great experience and that hospitality. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again and talk to you next week.